You know when an idea seems so obvious and yet for years and decades no one has ever taken it up, and you think, is it just me that's seeing this but no one else is? What's going on? Well, this is sort of that moment, I feel, and yet there's also so much courage and commitment and dedication that needs to take place to ensure that something like Stable One changes lives of those who are homeless in community. We're going to be hearing the story from Katherine Kirkwood, the CEO of Stable One, today. Let's get stuck into this conversation right now. G'day, Katherine.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you in. Maybe we're going to talk a lot more about Stable One, about how others can get involved, like I mentioned. But before we hear your story, just give us the quick sort of 30-second synopsis. What is Stable One?
Yeah, sure. Well, Stable One, we see our role as empowering the church to care for those without a home. So providing shelter and walking alongside people who are doing it tough.
Yeah. And you do it in remarkably creative ways, which is actually not necessarily going and building whole brand new things to do that, but actually using the facilities we already have, right?
Yeah, that's right. So our main program that we started with is the Yarra Valley Winter Shelter. So it's using church buildings to provide accommodation. That's our main thing that we do, and we've kind of expanded from there. It's funny that you said building, because we would like to build some things at some point, but the shelter is our biggest program. So.
Great. And we do want to note that Stable One is currently Victorian-based. There are others in other states that do sort of similar things. So we're not going to have just an only Victorian conversation. We understand the program is going around Australia and around New Zealand as well. So we're wanting to talk about this topic, and as a producing team for the show as well, we sort of sat and talked around this and said, look, we don't want to do things that are only relevant to one, but we think the topic and the ideas can be great inspiration for others. So that's why, if you're listening, we're wanting to have this conversation today. Before we get into all that, let's talk a bit about your story personally. What has led you to actually being a part of this? As maybe take us a bit to your childhood and through there of the things on your heart that perhaps shaped you into the role that you're in today.
Yeah, sure. I did grow up in a Christian home. My mum was a Christian, and she took us along to church. My dad actually became a Christian when I was about 15 years old through an Alpha course, so that was amazing. I think as a child, I always believed in God. I knew about Jesus and all those things, but I think probably it was when I went to uni that I really sort of owned my faith for myself. I was, hanging out with the Christian Union and hearing talks and doing Bible studies and whatnot with peers my own age, which was really important because I didn't have that at church at that time. And so that was really foundational for my faith. Doing things like beach mission, with Scripture Union, went down to the caravan park at Barwon Heads and did beach missions there. My Christian faith has always been a really big part of my life. And I think, sort of as life went on, I'm very, my life has been very comfortable. And I didn't want to be a person that took that for granted. I went to a Stable One fundraiser dinner in 2019, and it was really, really impactful. They set it up in such a way that each person on the table, where you sat depended on what type of meal you would get, basically. And we didn't know this coming in. Like, it was a big surprise. So, someone would have, a green sticker, and they'd have to go over to the place where there was a community meal. So, they got a community meal, and, some other person had to go to the barbecue. So they went and got a sausage and bread. My sticker sent me to the food bank. And I went over to the counter and got this pack, and, it's 2-minute noodles and, whatever else, and like cans of things. And we're like, okay, we don't have facilities to like do anything with this food. It actually hit home, okay, you can pick up a food package, but who's got a kettle to boil the water? And, so it was just really hit home. The event was obviously designed to show the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And that was really impactful for me. So that's kind of how I first came across Stable One. And then after that, I started volunteering because I guess I felt convicted that, for most of my life, I'd been totally happy to send money to, charities and things that were doing great stuff with the poor, but I didn't actually want to be confronted with it myself. And I thought, you know what, I really need to do this. So I was volunteering, started volunteering in 2020. We had a bit of a different program then because of COVID.
Yeah.
But I guess for the first time I was meeting people whose worlds were like totally different to my own. People who had just come out of jail. That was a shock to me, these are not people that I usually hang out with. People who had, really traumatic backgrounds, and mental health issues. Their worlds were just very, very different to me. And I actually, I continued volunteering, and because I have an accounting background, I became the Stable One bookkeeper. So I did that for a few years, and then last year the opportunity came up to apply for the CEO role, which I was kind of invited to do that, and it was a big shock to me actually. In my sort of deliberations about what should I do, I've been invited to to step forward into this job, or to at least apply for the job. And I was praying about it, asked God, what do you want me to do? And I had a couple of really I call them God incidental moments, because I don't believe in coincidences. There was a particular devotion. I was absolutely, saying to God, what do you want me to do? Because this is a huge decision. I'd been in my previous role for 15 years. What am I going to do? And I'm like, I just had a real sense that he would give me an answer in a particular devotion that I was about to read. And it just happened to be James 2. It was verses 14 to 17, and it was talking about, what good is it to just say, God bless and have a good day to people without actually doing something about their physical needs. And
Pretty
I'm like,
direct. Yeah,
whoa.
That's right.
Okay. So that was a big answer to me. And there was another devotion after that talked about, your faith is proved in obedience to God. And I'm like, okay, well, if he's telling me that I really need to step forward into this. But I think we all have those moments where we're like, can I do this? Like, I had a real moment of going, but am I equipped to do this? I can't be our predecessor, Jenny, amazing lady. I can't be Jenny, and you have those doubts. And I don't know if you've read the Prince Caspian. Have you read that book?
Oh, so many years ago. So I can't remember it myself properly.
There's a little moment in there, and I just happened to be reading that particular page of that particular book to my daughter, Lucy, who you probably now know where the name comes from. Right. And it's about Prince Caspian, and he's about to be declared king because, he's defeated his evil uncle and what have you. And Aslan asks him, are you ready to become king? And he's like, well, I don't think I am. I'm just a kid. And Aslan turns to him and said, if you had felt yourself sufficient, it would have been proof that you were not. And I was like, okay. So I stepped into it, believing that God would equip me. And it's been an amazing journey.
That's so good. And it's still really just the start of that. That's so wonderful. Thank you for that. We always love hearing the personal part of the stories as well. Let's jump into now some of the practicalities of what it actually means to be involved with Stable One. So you talked about sort of helping churches and equipping churches to understand. So let's get into some of those nitty-gritties.
Yep.
What are you actually encouraging and inspiring and I suppose challenging churches to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So our winter shelter model we've developed over many years. It started up in 2017 was our first one. And we researched, there were other things happening in other countries, so in the US, in Canada and the UK as well. And Jenny back at that time did lots of research and because she was really convicted, we need to actually do something. We're not in a situation where we ourselves can solve homelessness. We can't do that. That's going to take a massive coordinated effort between government, everyone, What we can do though, and Jenny was really inspired that we can provide some practical help right now Because if we wait until we can solve every single problem, we actually won't ever do anything, will we? So what the model is that we partner together with churches. Churches use their venues as overnight accommodation for the winter shelter. So we take guests who are experiencing homelessness and, provide an evening meal. It's dormitory style accommodation. So it's often in the church sanctuary, you push the pews apart and, set up stretcher beds and mattresses and things. But it's actually more than that. Our tagline is more than a place to stay. So it's not just about, a meal and shelter. It's very much about walking alongside people, treating them like people, because often, if you're living on the street, people don't treat you like people. And that's a lot of feedback that we get from guests, that we can help with providing that sense of belonging and community and reconnection.
And so is it practically working that, say, in the local area, there might be, 5 churches and so one might do a Monday, then a Tuesday. Is that how it works? Yeah,
that's right. In the Yarra Valley, we have 7 partner churches. So each church hosts one night a week. In our situation, though, we're actually only using 3 of the venues because, you want the venues to work really well for the program. So we have 3 venues. And I love this, that how rare is it that churches are working across denominations? So you'll have one church, hosting the shelter in someone else's church building. So it's a real opportunity to work together. And for churches who don't have a lot of people as well, because we're working together, we can actually do something. Great. So,
that's great. Really good. A couple of things that just jump out at me, I'd love us to flesh it out a little bit more as well, is one of the things you said is you used the word guest, which I thought was my sense is it's a very deliberate choice of the word. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, so we're very much about hospitality. It's very much wanting to provide that care and that love and that welcome to people. It's certainly a very, very deliberate word that we use, because we're there to bless them, not to necessarily do everything for them. So, there's a community development approach here as well. So, come and help us do the dishes and this is how you set up your bed and what have you. It's very we like to call it a program as opposed to a service, because it's us all in working together. But certainly those who are coming in are guests.
The other thing I picked up was around that idea that it says that so that more than a meal, more than a place to stay. Is this idea that, and certainly as I've understood more about Stable 1 too, is that really the expectation on a church, a healthy expectation that might be hosting, is that actually you're all in. So the job's not, which often in Christian circles we're quite good at, my job's to do the food and then get it out and do the washing, and that's my now actually the job includes all of that, as well as sitting and having a good conversation and being there and finding out about someone's life and sharing a bit of your own life and hearing and playing cards while we sit around and have a cup of tea later into the evening or whatever. So is that something that was natural for churches to gravitate to? Is that something that Stable 1 needed to go, hey, this is a really important part of it?
I think, it's a bit of both. The shifts that are the easiest to fill are the cooks. We have a lot of people that love to cook, which is fantastic. But actually, part of the shift when you're cooking is to stay for dinner, and we're all sitting around a table together and interacting and what have you. And I think, my own experience, for instance, I was never willing to be uncomfortable until I sort of came across Stable 1 and thought, actually, I need to be uncomfortable. And it's the uncomfortability that actually helps us grow then. So it doesn't come naturally to everyone, but I would say that, it's the best thing. Don't just be in your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone, and that's actually when you'll learn and you'll grow. And I think one of the really big things too is in doing that, one of our goals at the winter shelter is not just providing accommodation and belonging and all of the things. It's actually the things that it does to the volunteers too, because it breaks down the stigma and the judgment. Because when you meet people and hear their stories and chat and you find out wow, it's really hard to make positive decisions when you've had all of this terrible stuff happen to you. It really breaks down the judgment, and I think that's one of the really great things.
That's great. I love hearing that. That is so good. The CEO of Stable One, Katherine Kirkwood, is my guest on Towards Understanding. We're going to be back. We're going to hear some of those stories. Now, I know, Katherine, you may not be able to use people's names exactly, but we're going to hear the stories. We're going to hear some of the impact, and we're also going to start asking the question, hey, what might it mean if my church or my local area was to do something like this? What would we think about? I'll put those questions to Katherine as well. Next here on Towards Understanding.
Share your brand, your event, your message across 90 Christian radio stations and major cities in Australia and New Zealand by sponsoring Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton Bielen. More than 210,000 people tune into Towards Understanding each week, and with just one sponsorship, you'll reach this immense engaged audience. Find out more about this exciting and unique opportunity now on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.
I want to hear the two stories first. So one is I want to hear about the church's stories and the impact on volunteers, but let's start with those who've actually gone through the program, who are in need of this program. Is there one or two great stories that you always love sharing? And I appreciate you may not be able to use individuals' names.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, there's been a few. It's hard to narrow it down. One of them, and this was not a local one, it's actually from one of our affiliates in Toowoomba in Queensland. And I was chatting with the project coordinator there recently, and he let me know that there was a gentleman that had come to stay at the shelter who had been really unwell, actually, and he was living, sleeping rough. He'd ignored his health issues. Things are complex, right? So he came to stay at the shelter, and actually while he was at the shelter experienced like a medical emergency, basically. Got rushed to hospital. The situation was that, if he wasn't in the shelter and he had been sleeping rough and experienced that, he probably would have died because there wouldn't have been anyone around to help him. So he ended up being in hospital for a couple of weeks. But then after that, through the connections that he'd made at the shelter, he actually was provided with accommodation, which was really exciting. And that was a few years ago now. He's still in stable accommodation. He's working for himself. The best thing, I think, though, is that he reconnected with his family through that as well. And the guy that I was speaking to, he said, his daughter called us and she just said, thanks for giving us back our dad.
Wow.
And that was the impact of just, staying at the shelter and being cared for.
Yeah.
It was an amazing impact. And another one, like last year, locally, we actually cared for our first family. Now, we can't take children because we can't guarantee that it's a safe space for kids, but we had some parents who had two adult teenage children. And they, their situation was that just so simple. It can so easily happen. Their father lost his license. He couldn't get to work, so he lost his job. They couldn't pay the rent, so they got evicted. And, in winter, the four of them, family of four, were living in a tent, on an oval somewhere. And, they came to stay at the shelter. And they were wonderful, that it was so good just to see them flourish in shelter life, helping out other guests and what have you. And happily they were able to find some accommodation while they were there. But, big celebration for them. And they gave us boxes of chocolates to say thanks. And it was just a really beautiful experience. Like we basically met them where they needed us.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's so good. I love that. How many people, on average, are you having sort of per night through the winter months? Yeah,
so we actually only take up to 10 people a night. I think in the early days, Jenny was like, we can fit 25 in here. And then, you sort of realise in practice that when you don't have a home, things can be really complex.
Yes.
So we only take up to 10 a night. But they, some people will stay a couple of nights and move on. Some people might stay a few weeks. Some people might stay the whole time. But so across the winter, we generally sort of have maybe 30 to 35 people that we care for.
Yep. And is it running across other months as well, or is it just through the winter time?
It is just through the winter at this point in time. I know, so one of our affiliates in Wangaratta, they ask volunteers at the end of winter, it's the volunteers saying we need to keep going because I feel like the seasons are a bit out of whack at the moment, and it's really cold in September still. So it certainly can be flexible, but at the same time, the 3 months is good because it's a bit more achievable for volunteers. But also, there's a bit of to have an end date is actually sometimes a good thing. Because it goes, okay, this is a program, not a service. You've got 3 months. Let's make this work to the best of your and our ability to work on some positive next steps. Yeah,
that's really good. Let's sort of swing it as well. Can you talk through some of the volunteer understandings? You shared yourself about that idea of, out of your comfort zone and helps, I suppose, with that lack of judgment that maybe we weren't even realising we were harbouring from that perspective. But can you share some stories of those who have volunteered and a life change for them?
Yeah, it depends on the volunteer, I think. But, we've had lots of volunteers say, that it's given them that new understanding that I spoke of before. So just that, they are looking at people different now, maybe, dare I say, looking at people through the lens that God gives, that they're loved by God and, just with far less judgment. I know one lady said, it actually gave me the confidence to approach someone who was living in their car, to see if I could, help, so it's sort of given them that confidence to go, they're people, that need care. And just, I think we've really found too that although we focus on, providing that safe space of belonging for our guests, it actually becomes a space of belonging for our volunteers too. And they're meeting, because you're meeting people across different denominations as well. And from the community, we have lots of volunteers from the community too. So, the effects are far more, far more wide-reaching than just our guests.
That's great. From a practical perspective, I suppose I'm constantly in my mind going, I think there's an opportunity for inspiration here, right? The ability to replicate this feels like, and maybe it's not going to be exactly the same, but it feels like that should be able to be done across churches around our nations. So this is why I've sort of got this mindset, and the reason I'm asking you these sorts of things, Katherine. So from a practical point of view too is, we talked about like one church, one night, it seems reasonable to do, and people there. Are people staying overnight here as well? Is that part of what happens?
Yeah, so the shifts, the volunteer shifts, we break it up into an evening shift that ends at 11 p.m. And then our gold star volunteers come in overnight, because we do need 2 volunteers overnight to stay awake as well, to keep make sure the shelter is a safe place for everyone. So they come in at 11 and leave at 6. And then we have the morning shift come in.
Wonderful. Doing breakfast and that sort of thing.
It's a bit of self-serve breakfast and pack up and what have you. But definitely can be replicated. When we actually started in 2017, from there we actually at that time had other areas going, hey, this is good. Can we do this too? So we, as time went on over sort of 2018 there, we developed the Winter Shelter Network. So we set it up because we thought, well, we've done all this research, we've done all this planning, we've written all these policies, all of this stuff. To set up our own program, let's work out a structured way where we can share that. We developed the Winter Shelter Network, and we've got affiliates in Queensland, like I spoke about before, as well as down here in Victoria. And we actually welcomed 3 new affiliates in the space of about 4 weeks in the last few months. So,
wonderful.
So it's great.
So if somebody's thinking, hey, look, you know what, maybe my church could be involved, or maybe there's somebody who's leading a church, our church definitely could be involved. How do they find out more about just saying that we're going to need help, or you just talked about all those sorts of things? Oh, yes. If someone can be writing policies, awesome.
Who wants to do that?
That's right. So how do they get in touch, and what's the best way to actually go about asking those questions? Is it sort of internal questions they need to ask to themselves in their church first, or is it start by talking to you? What's the best way?
Yeah, look, I'd suggest reaching out to us. we obviously, you can jump on the website and have a bit of a look.
And what is that website?
It's stable1.org.
Great.
So have a bit of a look on there. You'll see there's a bit about the Winter Shelter Network, but the first step, basically, I mean, I get inquiries through the website, which is great. And the first step is really us sending out, we have a thing called a toolkit. So it basically, it's funny you just said, ask yourself some questions.
Yes.
It actually guides you through that,
Great.
what do you need to work out, if the shelter is a good option for your church. But then also, some of the practical things to consider. And then, we provide that totally just on request. And then, if there's more that we can do to help, then we can sort of discuss, affiliating with the network. Excuse me. All of our affiliates are autonomous, they're independent, because I think addressing local needs is the key thing.
Yes.
So it's sort of going to look a little bit different in
around.
different places, but we're certainly our heart and our passion is to see more churches do this.
Yep.
And
I mean, there's been a lot of sort of very macro conversations around cost of living and these sorts of things. Are you seeing the impact of that sort of in the programs as well?
Yeah, for sure. We work really closely with our local, what's it called? Homelessness Access Point Service. Which is the place where that provides support for those experiencing homelessness. So we hear a lot from them just about potentially the changing face of homelessness, because cost of living as they rise and people can't afford rent. It's a new thing, and it's actually, it's not necessarily long-term homelessness that we're looking at now. It's new, people that are experiencing it for the first time. So
It's, as you said, it's something that for me I feel like, and I don't often get on the bully pulpit on the program, but it does feel like this is an opportunity that seems to be that if we are, as a broad Christian church, like a sort of that universal church, wanting to really make a difference, this does feel like exactly in the wheelhouse of what churches should be doing, especially with perhaps buildings that aren't being used as much in these sorts of ways. So this is why I'm so passionate about sharing this story today. So can I encourage you to be really thinking about that and saying, look, we weren't involved in that. Maybe you're not involved in a local church, but there's a church around the corner and you can, hey, let's go and have a chat to them. We certainly understand there's people of all different faith perspectives listening, but if you are involved in that church circle at all and can get involved with it, could I encourage you to head to stable1.org, ask those questions. They're willing to help. I think this is a moment for our nations to make a difference from the grassroots up and do something. So, Katherine, thank you so much. Is there any final things that you'd want to just perhaps encourage and challenge those around who might be considering doing something like this?
Well, I think it's just what I said before about if we wait till we have all the answers, we're not going to do anything. Yeah. So this is a program that's practical. It provides that immediate relief and support to people. And it can change lives as well. So it's not even just for the 3 months. It can actually go on and change someone's life. I just encourage people to step out of your comfort zone. It'll do good things for you, and it will do good things for other people too.
I love it. Now, it's Stable One. That's spelt out ONE. So stable1.org. That's the place to head. Stable1.org. The CEO of Stable One, Katherine Kirkwood, my guest today. Katherine, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This is Towards Understanding.